Well, hey, welcome to Quest Givers. I am here with Gareth and John and Nathaniel, and we're going to talk about our newest module, Mountain Mayhem. And we're going to give you guys a page through so you can see this enormous module. It is a heist module with all these crazy twists and turns. We've got some great art. We've got some wonderful pictures and terrain by John. And let's take a look at it, Gareth.
Yeah, so here, as usual, we have a cover with the quest givers and the artwork that I did and spammed you all on Facebook Messenger with the various layers of what was happening. So as usual, it's difficult to turn because it's fresh off the printer. Now, of course, you get this as a PDF. It's not actually available as a booklet, but I've printed it out so you can see it. Now, it starts with all our thanks and all that thing, and then it has the table of contents here for easy reference. And then, of course, there's no summary. It just dives right in.
Bam, right in.
There's no messing around when it comes to a quest givers module. Right.
No, you just kick you right in there.
We're starting in prison?
Yep, you start in prison, so it's like, oh, it's one of those modules. Why is it that they always start in a prison? Scotty, why do we start in a prison?
I think it's a great buildup, actually, because there's some stuff that goes on in the prison that's really fun role play to start out, and it it's like sometimes it's like, oh, you're in a prison, now you're in the adventure, right? They don't boot you out of the prison immediately. Like, there's some stuff going on. You can ask guard stuff. There's this guy in there, you can see these snot and tears, playing on the emotions of the players. There's a lot of fun stuff even before you even get to the king to start the mission. So I really love the extra stuff you've added for that, Gareth.
Yeah, we front load a lot of world building, and the way we like to do world building, instead of you reading like huge long paragraphs of, by this year in 1825 this happened, blah blah blah, who cares? What you ask the fellow, you fall asleep. You ask the fellow
while your players are falling asleep, right?
You ask the fellow prisoners questions, and you ask the guard questions. Of course, the guard's not going to give you the time of day, but the fellow prisoners. But of course, the fellow prisoners, the one guy here, he speaks with a Cockney rhyming slang accent. So he speaks in Cockney rhyming slang. Now, if you've ever experienced Cockney rhyming slang, it's like next to impossible to understand what they're saying.
You're kind of like, what is he saying?
So you're trying to get really important information out of a guy who's giving you everything you want. It's just you don't understand what he's saying.
And one of the things that I really loved about the intro to this is it brought me right back to old school Elder Scrolls Oblivion in the beginning, where there's different dialogue depending on what race you chose to play as, and it's so exciting. It brings you right back into that.
Yeah, so you meet a fellow prisoner, and then you have a whole bunch of questions. Obviously, you meet a guard, and all the character dialogue is here for the various possible questions you could have. There we go. So
I love the artwork.
The beautiful terrain that John has done on Tabletop WitchCRAFT channel, the beautiful art by Scotty, the beautiful layout by Gareth.
Just so beautiful. It's
obviously the best of the whole thing, So then you are led away to meet the king, and this is where the actual, this is what your mission is going to be. And of course, you can see the execution here. He's busy chopping off the heads of the people who did not agree to do this mission. Hey, screw you, man! So
we're gonna what?
The idea of it's the offer, but it should be you have no choice.
right.
So we do railroad it a little bit there in the beginning.
Oh, it's the offer you can't refuse, right?
Exactly.
Correct. But we do that. You got to have a little bit of carrot and stick just to get things rolling. That's really important. So then you meet the Vizier, who's the advisor to the king, and you hear a little bit more information. If you're very good at listening, you can kind of pick up on things that are being said, which adds more world building and more to what's happening. You can ask the king questions, and then he speaks like a royal. So it's always your king, your king. He never speaks about me or I. It's always your king and your realm, which is really his.
Right.
And then, of course, you return to prison to kind of ferment on what's going to be happening. And that's when you get introduced to a dungeon rat. And the rats start to play a very important part of this module. And you can see there's little pictures of rats dotted all over this PDF, which is really, really cool. So, so then you're introduced to the Royal Assassin. Now, the Royal Assassin is basically the person who's going to take you to where you need to go and make sure you... Woo, what happened there? The Royal Assassin is the one who's going to take you to where you need to go and make sure you actually do what you said you were going to do and not try and skimp away. So what did you guys feel about sort of this whole lead up to where it's going?
Yeah, so no, I really enjoy the beginning of the story. Like you said, it does kind of put you onto this path. It gets everyone involved in what's going on. But I love how universally it can be applied. Like I said, as a DM of the group, I love to have things that I can just put into my story. So this works really well for that. If you have player characters that are trying to be murder hobos or doing all the wrong things you don't want them to do, you throw them in jail and you put them back on track with this story, which is just so awesome. So
yeah, I do like the feeling of the the Oblivion, Elder Scrolls, Morrowind, all that, and it puts you in a little bit of a comfortable position when you first start the module too. And it doesn't start off with dragons flying around. Yeah. You got to listen, and pick up on all the little nuances, which, by the way, there are a ton of them in this module.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the player that listens is really going to be rewarded, or takes notes is really going to be rewarded in this module.
Like, for instance, here, when you're with the Royal Assassin, there's a little slip up in one of the questions you ask. There's a little slip up in the answer, which reveals like a massive part of the story. But if you're not listening, you would never pick it up, and you would only know that was a massive part of the story later on when it will click. But if you hadn't, there I go again. But if you hadn't been listening, then you wouldn't have basically picked up on that. So there's lots of little things like that are just dotted throughout all the pages and pages and pages of this module. So I'll get back to it here. So you journey to the foreign city, and we've actually got a roll table here with all the different things that can happen on the way to the city. So you can draw this out as long as you want. We just do a quick little table, but if you want to have 12 encounters on the way to there, you can actually draw this out over many sessions before you get to the core of the module. Then, of course, you've got to negotiate your way through the city gates. Why are you here? Why are you carrying weapons? Blah, blah, blah. You've got to ditch your weapons because, they're not going to let you in because no weapons are allowed because it's like a wartime scenario. And then you've got to deal with the guard. So here's a beautiful picture of terrain of the city gates with all the minis and everything like that. There's lots of that sort of thing. And then, of course,
I wanted to say something about the getting your way in, right? Sure. In Questgiver's modules, we like to have little mechanics that are system neutral mechanics. Like there's a nice little mechanic here where when you're when you're talking to the guards, you're getting points for using certain tactics, right? And then by the time you tally that up, it's what the outcome's going to be. Are you going to be dragged off to the the jail, or are they just going to let you in? So that's a fun little mini game that actually happens there at the gate.
So sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just want to say that's something that I really appreciate too, because again, as a DM, I love trying to drag my characters into these role play opportunities, and that's such a great way to do it. Looking at the tables, things that you say that help you, that hurt you. It really kind of helps everyone, even the people that just want to be there to roll dice, get involved in the role play of the story.
Exactly. Like they like that competitive aspect of it. And if there's it's like a little game here, let's see how well we can do. We can do this. So yeah, I think that's a fun little addition.
Funny how role players like the gamification of things. So yeah, then you move on. You could go into if they are suspicious of you, you can be dragged in front of the guard captain, and he's a bit of a gambling fanatic. So you can actually gamble your way out of trouble if you want to play. And there's actually rules for the game that you play, that you gamble with the it's called Hunt the King. And of course, if you lose, you end up in the foreign dungeon where there are more rats. You end up in jail again.
The rat.
Everyone loves a good little card mini game.
That's right.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, it's easy to get out. There's just so many people being thrown in jail that they kind of like misplace you, and you kind of can wander out. And then you find yourself in the foreign city. So tell us a little bit about, Scotty, what is the feel of the city? What kind of makes this special?
Well, we've got all these refugees coming in, so it's this kind of chaotic thing. It's this chaotic soup going on, and you're in there trying to find the guy you don't know is your contact, right? You're in this mess of a city, you know, with all this going on, trying to find some guy you can give the password to. Right? It's like, yeah. So it's just crazy. And I love the little girl we have in here, who you know, ends up getting involved with the players. You know, she's fun.
She is actually my favorite character in this.
Yeah.
I always like one specific character that I love in a module, and I like spend a little bit of time on their backstory and whatever that's not in the module, but it's in my head. And it's like, why are they like this? Why do they do this? And it's Tochi the blind urchin. So very much based on Zatoichi, the blind samurai. So anybody who knows that story and the TV series and movies, and there's hundreds of them, I think. This urchin is based on Zatoichi. But instead of being an old samurai, she is like a 9-year-old.
Right.
9-year-old. Yeah.
But she's amazing. She's totally amazing.
So there's various different things that happen, like the alarm could be sounded if you do certain things, and what happens then. And then, of course, you can ask various questions, and if you befriend Tucci, you basically, she shows you like a secret entrance to the sewers. And then, of course, you've got all the bits and pieces about the sewers and the various different entrances and all the things you can, as you can see, there's lots of dialogue options and things that are happening here. And then, of course, there's the marketplace where you meet Sir Lantham the Spy. What can you guys tell us, Nate and John? What do you can tell us about Sir Lantham the Spy?
Yeah, so he has kind of an interesting dialogue tree that you can kind of explore going in, and you know, might confuse players a little bit, make them think twice about what's going on, if he's the right person to be talking to, and he kind of, you know, maybe might lead you off into a path that you weren't expecting. And so it really challenges your players to think about what's going on. It's not something that's just like so black and white. And again, really rewards those players that pick up on the little details on things and try to pay attention to the role play of the story.
So what starts to happen is you start to hear about this inventor who's created the super weapon. And he's having a luncheon, so you're basically going to try and get yourself into that luncheon, right? Because you got to try and give it. But as you've been playing through all this, you're starting to see bits and pieces, like the plans could be here or the plans could be there, and you've got to try and find these plans and steal them. So there's kind of two things going on at the same time. You've got two things pulling at you. You've got to try and be somewhere at a certain time, and you've got to try and steal the plans. And you've got all these crazy characters kind of working with and against you. So one of the people you meet in the marketplace is called the Silk Merchant. And there's a little thing that happens that sort of introduces you to that character. And that's sort of your in to the luncheon, really. One of your ins. There's like about 4 of them. But he's a sort of an easy in for the sort of players that you don't want to dig around too much. And of course, we have rats.
Always rats.
Add more rats.
And then we have the temple. The temple has the bishop. What can you tell us about the temple and the bishop, Scotty?
Yeah, the temple with the bishop, he's kind of a way, another path to take. He kind of leads to another path to take, right? I think that's what I would basically.
Yeah. So basically, the bishop on surface appearance is a very nice, kind, gentle person who's like everyone in the city turns to for advice and so on and so forth. But on the flip side, he's also the head of the Thieves Guild and runs the Thieves Guild from catacombs underneath the temple.
Yeah, that too.
So he's like,
Oh yeah,
I can get you into the luncheon as the bishop, or I can get you into the luncheon as a spy. Like, so whichever way you approach it, if you kind of like, well, where can we go to get these weapons? Or like, how do we get into this luncheon? Either way, like this character can actually do both, and he can react to you as to whether you know that he's this or you know that he's that. Yeah, so again, this whole sort of duality depends on how you play, how you approach things, and of course, being the temple and there's all these monks roaming around who are all the sort of members of the Thieves Guild, the underground market, and that's all detailed in here, where you can buy weapons and that sort of stuff underneath this fortress city.
That's it. Looking through this module, I feel like I'm 12 again, reading some of the books that I loved growing up. I love how it's laid out, the art, everything. Well done.
Well, that's always what we want. We want that feeling to come back, and that's that's why it's designed that way. That's why we write it that way. It's because we want that to come back again.
It's awesome.
And then there's the main castle, so which has the Hall of Records in it, which obviously the plans can be there, and so you can try to get into the castle by scaling the walls, and there's all kinds of things that can happen, related to that. If guards appear and all that sort of thing, and then having to deal with the bureaucracy of the Hall of Records.
I think
is always fun.
I think that's really the main brilliance of this whole module, is just the fact that it's just this giant sandbox, right? And there's so many different events and situations that your characters can get into. And then not only the different events, but each event has different paths you can take in the event. So I mean, really, the replayability of this is astronomical, because you could play through 5-6 times and you would feel like you're playing an entirely different story every time, which is so cool.
And that's there's so much to absorb, but the way that we prefer to structure the module is all the events actually happen in like a chronological order. So when you as the GM are reading the module, you're kind of experiencing the module in real time as the players would go through it. So you kind of get that player experience. So it really is like a choose your own adventure almost. You could actually read it as a choose your own adventure, and take it that way and actually experience it for yourself in that direction. So that's just another aspect of the way that we do modules. If you haven't seen any of the other ones.
I think that makes it really great for people who maybe want to try, DMing, GMing, haven't done it before, don't have a lot of experience. Hey, I don't want to open up this massive, Dungeons and Dragons quest book with all this information. I've never done it before. They can pick this up and, like you said, basically read it cover to cover, almost as a choose your own adventure, and they can get that introduction to being the DM for the first time with everything right at their fingertips.
They get a feel of the player, and they get the feel of the background of the mechanics of how GMing actually works. Like, okay, get them to do this, and then they go there, and then this happens, and then you roll this dice.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point, because the module directs you to those specific points. It's not like, drop you off and now you got to figure out where all the points connect. Like it tells you, oh, you did this, go here. You did that, go here. Yeah.
So then you go into the inventor's house, which is where this luncheon starts to happen. And there's a whole bunch of colorful characters that are in there, including Lester the Inventor, who looks very familiar.
Hold on. You gotta call something out here.
And so then you kind of get even more of a backstory of why all of this is happening, what's happening in the world at large. So this is like being in the sort of diplomatic luncheon that's deciding the fate of the world kind of thing. and who the power brokers are and who's really in charge and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you know, there is obviously a twist, and then there's the aftermath, more rats.
What could go wrong in a London?
So,
rats.
then you are discovered, and you're then the city guard is alerted, and you're now being chased through the city. So all your decisions in the city, who you've befriended, what secret passages you found, all that kind of stuff, now is the time that pays off.
Yeah.
If
you
you
can't
didn't
call that up, right?
if you didn't,
reap
it
the
becomes
rewards
a huge
or
mess.
the other, yeah, or not.
So ultimately, you end up in the sewers, and you're running around in the sewers trying to find this huge weapon, and also escape from the guards. And of course, we got more beautiful sewer terrain from John. It's always great having inspirational things to work with when you're writing this sort of stuff, because obviously, you know, this terrain, I'd watched his videos, I'd watched him make, and I was like, you know, I know what needs to be in here, the descriptions and so on and so forth, that kind of fits what you're actually going to see in the images. So yeah, that's part of the great thing of collaborating with artists.
Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you know, you get to where you discover another twist, and also the weapon itself, which is the beautiful airship you see behind John and Nate there. There's a very nice large picture of it here. And of course, that is where the module ends. There's all John Tabletop Witchcraft information here, and all our other modules. Of some of them, there's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
There's there must be like 22 now, Scotty, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, plus extra bits and pieces like how to write a module, how to run a game, etc., etc. Luck dice rules, which is probably our most popular thing that we sell. So yes, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to Nate and John for helping us put all of this together.
Thank you.
Scotty,
Awesome.
as usual, thank you for being a wonderful friend and creator. And of course, you are watching Quest Givers, and link to this little thing is below. And we trust that you will enjoy it as much as we enjoyed actually putting it together. And yes, it's a wonderful experience, and I'm glad we've put it out into the world now. So go and buy it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And enjoy.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in the next video.
All right,
Bye,
take care.
everybody.